It is? Can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay. Hi guys, welcome. I'm Sumit. I work for Linaro. I'm sure many of you guys know because you've seen on the schedule. Sorry we're running late. I only have 3 slides because this is a BoF, so we should just have a more participative session, if you will. And yeah, so I'll just discuss ION. I'm not going to discuss what ION is or any of that. If you don't already know ION, I suggest we go and have a look at it in staging or in Android tree. We'll just talk very briefly about how ION has been in staging, what we try to do for destaging where it is right now, and how can we all help. I think the last bit is where it's been the most important. So December 2013, that's almost 3.5 years, 3 years now, or 4 years now, or 3. ION, yeah, something around there. So ION got merged into staging. John did a fabulous job here to get it out and sort out the patches and get into staging with all the workaround. October 2014, so almost a year later, we were able to send out, after a lot of discussions in various sessions and with a lot of people around, we were able to give out something called Senalock as an alternate to ION. If you already don't know the story, well, it didn't go off really well. At the same conference, in the same year at LPC, Laura also spoke about ION and DMA coherency and what are the problems around there. In August, we spoke again about, with I think a couple of versions on Senalock, we spoke about what are the issues that remain, and that was sort of my throw in the towel kind of a pitch, where I just wanted the community, someone in the community to stand up and say something about ION, Senalock, something else, nothing at all. And as a result, at that LPC, we sort of created an ION to-do list, which so updated the to-do list for Android to include stuff that needs to be done on ION before it can be moved out of staging. April 2016, so almost 7, 8 months, 10 months later, Laura still spoke about lessons from ION and why it's not going in the direction it should, destaging and so on. This year, last year, November 2016, again, Laura spoke about ION. We've been chatting quite a bit, and there's a follow-up email, so that was sort of her throw in the towel email. Thankfully, she didn't, and she posted out a few patches, which sort of fulfilled, or tried to fulfill the list of to-dos that we thought would be required for ION to move out to staging. So if you're interested, the latest version is here. I know that she's already working on the second version of her patches, which should come out very soon. If you're interested, really interested, I can probably share a work in progress branch. And as it's not directly related, but from the upstream side, Sync also got destaged in December 2016. And Sync is not something that relates directly to ION, but it's sort of, kind of related for Android user space. So that's where we are at. And how can we all help? So even when, I was very tempted to say if, but even when ION does get destaged, there will be quite a bit of work required. What Laura's effort has been all around, and what my effort earlier was around, was based on whatever users of ION were available open source. And so there might be a few things that our members or other vendors could find that the current set of patches may or may not completely help them with. I really urge all of you guys to have a look at the patches and participate. Please participate. Reviewing is participation, commenting is participation, testing is participation. So if you can just have someone in your internal teams take the patches, take the upstream ion, try to use it on your out of tree kernels or with your downstream kernels, and give us feedback, that'll be immensely helpful. So that's all that I had. Open for discussions. Okay. That's been pretty short.
So the question I would have is, in the downstream kernels, is ion even match what's in staging? I know in some vendor kernels I've looked at, it does not. That's not really that was not a really major vendor.
And thank you for bringing it up, because that's been my personal biggest grouse, because if nobody from the respective vendors and companies speak up and say that whatever is there, and I think that's partly responsible for the not speaking part, partly responsible for why it has taken so long for, I think, and again, it's my personal opinion, I think most of the people just don't care too much because it's 10 patches and they can happily live out of out of tree for them. On the other hand, if it is all merged in a consolidated way upstream, it's going to be 0 patches. So, but I think the couple of trees that I have been able to see, I know that it's not exactly the same as staging.
So, one kind of connected, related thing. So originally Android solved the how do you allocate for use case by having lots of platform-specific heaps, and user space somehow magically knows what heap to allocate from. There has been some work which is kind of stalled out, mostly because no one who has time has any interest, I guess, on this liballoc/GBM2 thing, which is intended to solve the problem of how do you figure out the constraints of multiple APIs and devices in a use case. I mean, that's, if it ever happens, I think that's the path forward for dealing with allocate, or figuring out who can allocate for a particular use case and how it can be allocated. That's probably something.
Sure, and Rob, you would remember how it has progressed. So
Yeah.
with Senaloc, we tried to solve the constraints problem in kernel, which of course probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but that was the only option we were thinking at the time. And now we are thinking with the UDMA and liballoc on how we can just park the problem in user space, because user space knows best about the kind of constraints it has to deal with and so on. My biggest request here is please participate. It's for all our members. It's for people who, if this is on YouTube or somewhere, whoever watches it, please participate, because that's how we're gonna get it out of staging and get it to work. Like, have the golden goal of having mainline kernel work with AOSP master. And
Well, to be honest, that happens even without Ion on some hardware. But
yes.
So with the current staging patches, can we at least start with, we have like AOSP running on Hikey and DB410C. Can we replace GBM Graloc and use Ion at what it is right now?
Why? Because we would gain nothing from that, and or to put it another way, part of the reason Ion is probably stalled is because there is no upstream users of Ion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we could maybe not Linaro, but the members can start doing, so that there is at least a reference upstream implementation that they can, like the member companies can now start, working on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so for Heike, it does use the upstream ion at this point.
Okay.
But the problem is it's with Mali. So it's the consumer isn't open, but at least the kernel, that's what it uses. So.
Okay.
Yes, you probably know that in our group, security, we have been working with adding a secure heap, as you call it, unmapped now, I think, instead. So that's a new heap type. And we have both users running Android and plain Linux, basically. So we for sure will start using ION. But another thing related to this now, since you have started to pulling it out from staging, let's say that we are kind of stabilizing our patches, or what's the advice? Should we kind of also try to get it out of staging, or should we submit our patches to staging?
So the consensus we had at LPC was to not add anything new right now in staging, and just have put whatever effort we can to move it out of staging. So if you guys have users, you know where the patches are. If you can test them and give like a tested by, it'll help speed up the process of getting it out of staging. On the related note, I think we are very happy to review any generic heap types that can be used with multiple in a generic way. So secure heap type might be a very good thing to look at after destaging. Sure.
We had Laura in the loop the last year also, so I think we're pretty aligned with her at least.
Just in the same scope, is as of today, when we want to add a heap, we need to break the UAPI. How to overcome with that in the long term? Easily adding heaps without breaking the UAPI, because we know we won't be able to break the UAPI on your route of the staging.
I don't have an easy answer to that, but that's where So I think right now what Laura has done is she's added a set of a mechanism of enumerating heap IDs that are available, so you don't just go by fixed heap IDs.
Yes, but sorry, I think this enumeration is still based on the heap types that are already handled by the ION. And if we get into with another heap type, like just a allocation strategy or allocation algorithm, then we'll have to declare it, and it has to be declared in this unified API. And it's fine if you have some close code, but if you want to get some upstream code, it's not handy, let's say.
So a fantastic feedback. I'd request you to do that on the mailing list as well. Yeah.
The other thing is that in other areas in the kernel, we've had places where people are able to do custom extensions for interfaces like this. Like one example for the clock IDs, you can have basically drivers register custom POSIX clock IDs that end up, instead of having positive numbers, they have negative numbers, and then drivers are able to implement that. And the idea is that in order to, basically user space needs to communicate through some other driver to understand whether or not the support for that custom clock is present or not. And those get dynamically allocated or as they're registered. So we have other ways that this sort of thing can be solved if we need to have this very custom situation. It's not ideal. We want to make as many generic, kind of abstract the heaps that people need out. But
yeah, and
the idea is not to be able to have some custom things. It's rather to find out that what's in ION does not cover something that is useful for the whole community, and that if we propose it and it needs to break something that is not breakable, then there is an issue. But if you have already means in other frameworks to overcome this, then, I just took the microphone because I think it's not about customizing. It's more about contributing, but on something that more or less was quite frozen and we don't want to break when we contribute. We'll rather have things nicely fitting into the existing frameworks.
yeah, I'd be interested in what the constraints you're worried about breaking are. So if there's a limitation in the interface at the moment, that would be something that people would want to hear about.
One other limitation for ION is also about security, because it's only one device in the thing. So we see that in Android, for example, we have to put the permission for the process with SO Linux and so on. And at the end, almost all the process may have access on ION, on the device, ION device. It's not very helpful for the security if you want to shred the security and specialize the heap, because everybody are using the same device. So basically, where you are doing security or you want to isolate a little bit more for the graphic or the video on which app you want to use and get more robust implementation of that, you can do it with ION because it's always the same device. So you have to open it to everybody.
I would say it's yeah, in a way you're right, but the way ION is currently meant for is in the Android. For Android, it's going to move to Android. ION.
The other part is SE Linux can handle more than just path-based restrictions. So you can have, constraints inside syscalls and things that say, okay, well, this class of applications can do these sorts of things. So I think that you can extend that so that inside the heaps we can even decide which heaps are accessible by which applications.
Extend that with the heap type and heap mask, which are how we select the heap in the ION controller. I mean, it's not only the ION controller, it's the content of the field. That allow.
I'm not sure I followed.
Yeah.
But we should talk some more. So, yeah.
Yeah, if you should raise it on the mailing list as well. So anyone else?
Just like I've been following the mailing list. So one thing that they're planning to kill is use ION for in-kernel allocations. I've grepped ION allocation like in the downstream kernel, and we have a handful of in-kernel allocations which it's never exposed to user space. So I don't know like if they are legit requirements or not, but just for everyone to know that that's the direction it's taking. So if there are, I mean, ideally we shouldn't. It should be just a user space way to allocate from a heap.
Yeah.
But if someone has a convincing reason to use it in kernel, then they should probably mention that.
And mention it on the mailing list. Yes. Because my only thing I want to emphasize is whatever discussions we can have at a public conference like this, in a public group like this, it's still not the set of people who are seen as interested in it if it's not on the public platform for the rest of the world. And if it's on the mailing list, whatever there are, then your objections, suggestions, everything is documented and accepted or rejected or debated. All right, thank you so much.